Good morning here from Memento. We're doing our book club out of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Today is February 8th, 2023. With me,
I got Tristan right here.
And John Smith.
John Smith is our guest today. So we're going to start with book 9. And I had some notes about the book itself. It's really the 5 sins is kind of what I got out of it. The first is injustice. Second, lying. Third, pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. Fourth is fearing pain. And then fifth is caring about pain and pleasure, death, fame, and obscurity. And then each one of those can go a little bit deeper. But yeah, that was the take home for me from that book, is just the different pleasure and pain, avoidance.
Yeah, I feel like this book 9 and book, I think 11, both focus on that. Like, I feel like every book's either focused on like nature, dealing with other people, or like dealing with vices and like mental things like that. So I like that observation.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because the differentiation between avoiding pleasure and pain and then also being afraid of it.
Yep.
So the fear leads to avoiding it, but they're separate sins. And he actually talked about that. Anyone who fears pain will also at times be afraid of some future event in the world. So that's the idea of things coming up and really being afraid of kind of your own fate. He talks a lot about fate and acknowledging that you have your role, you're here for a reason, you're part of the whole, so don't be afraid.
Yep.
What else you got?
I was focused on number 2 here, which is kind of what you were saying. Dishonesty or hypocrisy or self-indulgence or pride. Diseases like that being like the plague and like actual diseases threaten your life, but the ones that I just mentioned, dishonesty, hypocrisy, and self-indulgence, attack your humanity. So like one you can't really control, but the other one affects you in a larger scope down to like your character and your core, which is probably worse than having the plague, because that's that you live with that. You don't, if you have the plague, you kind of have to accept that and move on. But like when you choose to be dishonest or prideful or self-indulgent, that's something that's like a sickness that you have to live with for forever. It's like almost like self-induced.
And preventable.
Yep.
Because you're the one controlling it. Yeah, I like that a lot. One other one that I had, although jumping to 35 out of the book, is loss is nothing more than change. Universal nature delights in change, and all that flows from nature happens for the good. So it's just kind of bringing it back to all things happen for a reason. And his whole insight was, don't fight your fate.
Yep.
You're part of this grand unraveling of the universe, whatever you want to call it. The gods are there for your fate, and just let it happen.
Yeah, I think that's something that's interesting because a lot of people try to stay away from change, and I feel like if you just accept what's happening to you and you just do your best with it, that's the best way to go about things. But if like something happens to you, whether it be good or bad, and you just kind of take it too personally, and you question it and you complain about it, that's when things go bad. But no matter, like he says in the book, no matter what happens to you, you can tell yourself if it's good or bad. Like you can literally have half your body cut off if you wanted, and you can tell yourself if it's good or bad. And that was your fate. So just accept. You can either accept it or you can just complain about it forever. And that's one that I kind of journaled about that this morning. But also this one, number 13, it said, "Today I escaped from anxiety," or no, I discarded it because it was within me and my own perceptions, not outside. And I struggle with anxiety a lot, just like pretty much every day, just overthinking things like that. The more I think, the worse it gets. So it's like with anxiety, if you just believe that it's not there, it's not going to be there anymore. I feel like nowadays, a lot of people need to hear that. I feel like nowadays, a lot of people have anxiety, which isn't a problem, but it's like they identify with it so hard that they end up letting it control their lives, and they try to make it control other people's lives too. But I think that if you just believe that it's not a thing, it's not going to be a thing, which is like, it sounds really bro science-y, it sounds really
It's the power of the belief, and that's so true.
Yeah, I feel like if you told that to someone, they might say it's like toxic or something. No, just don't believe in it. But it's actually that true. Like having had anxiety my whole life, when I just sit down, I'm like, no, it's not like that. Then it's gone. But if I think about it over and over and over and over and over again, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
That cycle of self-perpetuating it and saying, oh my gosh, I'm having anxiety. Oh my gosh, and then it just keeps spiraling into that, making it worse. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy. What else you got?
I got 17. I really like this one. A rock thrown in the air, it loses nothing by coming down, gained nothing by going up.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really important because I feel like a lot of people, including myself, When you're in a perceived downward spiral of your life, you feel like you're losing everything. But when you're on the up and up, you get really prideful. Pride comes before the fall. But in reality, nothing really changed about you. Just like maybe external events. Like maybe if I'm doing jiu-jitsu, maybe I win a world championship and now I'm a world champion. I can act like I'm hot shit and walk around it. But if I didn't go to that competition, didn't win it, there's no reason for me to act like that, I was the same person before and after the event. I just have an extra metal thing around my neck.
Yeah.
But if I lost, I could take that the wrong way and then deprecate myself and be in a slump.
Sure.
But I didn't lose anything. I just lost a few matches. I didn't lose anything about my character,
It's about the story that you make about the meaning of that event. If you say, wow, I really put myself out there, I grinded through my training, and I did the best I could, I put it all out there, and I won a championship, but I still have a lot to learn, that's like a whole nother point of view versus also like the opposite side of like, man, I got my ass kicked, but I learned a ton. Like that's going to be really good.
Danaher talks about like the way the only mindset thing he teaches his athletes is to just understand that every competition, no matter how theatrical it is, whether it's a local tournament or like an ADCC, no matter what, if you just take every external thing away, like we're talking about in meditations, take every external thing away, it's just you, someone else, and a referee who has the rule set. And that's all it is. Like if you don't think about their name, how many titles they have, where you're at, the crowd screaming, the lights on you, it's just what you're doing every day in the gym. So it shouldn't actually matter what happens because you do it every day. So what's the point in doing it again?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's almost like just exactly what I feel like I try to think of competition wise. It's like every time I go into it, I just don't care. Sure. Like that's why I say that, and then I lose a competition. I get really upset.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. But
you can also pull yourself out of that quicker by
good.
that practice that you're acknowledging. Hey, man, I'm allowed to feel bummed about this.
Yep.
But I can also get out of it easier with that instead of letting it affect you for so long. I have 40 where it says, it is not then better to use your own power and freedom rather than show I can't even read that word, servile and supine concern for what you cannot control. Why did I highlight that?
Supine. I mean, supine would be like a supine.
Yeah.
guard.
yeah, supine. Maybe he's talking about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Back on the mat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So real visceral kind of.
It's about the control, acknowledging the control, lack of control, the different ways that you can get there, fighting for freedom versus the concern for what you cannot control. That's kind of goes back to that serenity prayer.
Yep.
That's a huge one for me. If I'm feeling like I'm faced against a wall, accept the things I can accept, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because there's certain things you're just not going to be able to change.
Yeah.
And accepting that is the first huge relief off of that pressure.
Yeah, I always highlight this number. So my brother in high school, his football number was 33, and so I always highlight number 33 to see how it would relate. And it's funny because every single one talks about like memento mori, like remembering death, and he passed away almost 7 years now. And I always highlight it to see how it relates, and all of them have always been like memento mori, which is really interesting to me. It says all that you see will soon have vanished, and those who see it vanish will vanish themselves. And the ones who reach old age have no advantage over the untimely dead. So like my brother died when he was 24, so I'm a year younger than he was when he passed away. And like when it happened, I was like, oh man, like he died so young. But then like if you think about it, a lot of people, no matter when they die, they either could have lived a lot more or they lived just enough. It's not even about the time; it's about what they did in the middle. There's one, I think it's book 12 or book 11, the ending one. It was someone complaining, and they were like talking to God, and he was like, I've only had 3 acts of my life. I want to have more. And then he was like, well, you had 3 acts and you did your best within them. That's all that matters. A story can be 3 acts.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 30. So that's something that really, really helps me. This whole book helps me deal with like he talks a lot about death in this book, and like that he struggled with it himself because he's writing about it so much. He's not writing it for anyone else but himself, so it's obvious that he struggled with it just as much as anyone else. But I think it's just like it's good to remind yourself that like literally everything is going to end at some point, and that's why you should be doing the right thing. So I always highlight number 33.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have 42, number 2. I wrote a little note in the mind. In general, you can always re-educate one who has lost his way, and anyone who does wrong has missed his proper aim and gone astray. You will find that none of these who excite your anger has done anything capable of it. excuse me, affecting your mind for the worse, and it's only in your mind that damage or harm can be done to you. They have no other existence. You're the one you're the gatekeeper.
Yep.
You're allowing the outside to affect your inside. And this was the book about sin, right? All the sins you were talking about, and that's one of the definitions I actually like about sin is missing the mark. When you miss the mark, we all miss the mark, but how can you get better at that?
Yeah, I always try to tell my kids, it's like, it's not, your parents don't care about the mistake you make, they care about what you do afterwards.
Yep.
It's like you probably don't give a shit if EJ spills milk on the carpet, but if he lies about it and tries to blame it on his sister, that's when you get angry, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not, and I feel like a lot of kids just get afraid of that. And they don't want to tell the truth, but in telling the truth, it actually is a lot better of an outcome.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson talks about that. It's like, if you tell the truth, everything comes after will fall right into place, but it's not going to be pretty because a lot of people don't like the truth, but it's exactly what you should be doing. Yeah. No matter what. He's talking about his wife has never told a single lie in their entire marriage, and it's caused a lot of turmoil, but it also made them a lot stronger. Yeah. So I feel like when you tell the truth and you accept the truth after you've sinned and missed the mark, right then it's probably going to be bad, but afterwards it's going to be a lot easier. And I like the fact that the word sin means to miss the mark, because it implies that you have another shot. Yeah. If I miss the mark once, I have another arrow. I can shoot again. It's not to fail completely. It's like you just messed up this one
You're not
time.
a bad person.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not, unredeemable. You have other opportunities. Anything else in 9?
I have one. It's about prayer. I've been praying a lot more recently. I've been reading the Bible a little bit more, So it says, either the gods have the power or they don't. If they don't, why pray? If they do, then why not pray for something else instead of for things to happen or not to happen? Pray not to feel fear or desire or grief. If the gods can do anything, they can surely do that for us. Start praying like this and you'll see. Not some way to sleep with her, but some way to stop wanting to. Not some way to get rid of him, but a way to stop trying. Not some way to save my child, but a way to lose your fear. Redirect your prayers like that and watch what happens. So it's like, it's not you praying for external things, it's you praying for internal strength to be able to handle the world.
Yeah, I love that.
And I feel like a lot of people, including myself, have been like, I really hope this happens. I really hope this guy does this. I really hope I get this job offer. I really hope this if I go into competition, I really hope I win this competition. But instead it should be like, hey, I want to have the strength to handle whatever outcome happens. That's like,
yeah, that's like a parent's biggest fear is like losing a kid.
Yep.
And so there's these thoughts that come through and they migrate through, and you're like, oh, what would happen? And then you can, and I'll find myself praying like, man, I prayed nothing bad happens to my kids. Yep. And but then I also recognize similarly, it's like, let your will be done. Like like whatever's going to happen, let me have the strength to endure whatever it is, and not to like try to write however I need to have it be written. It's a different perspective, and actually I feel it's more empowering.
You want book 10 now?
Yeah, let's do it. I put part of the whole, benefits as parts. Kind of that was the gist of it. Maintain control of your mind and thoughts was another big one for me, and remember the inevitability of change and death. That's throughout the whole book, but particularly this book.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually never made it to book 10 until now. So this is like my first time ever actually completing meditations. I've read it like 3 times through. I just always get to book 10 and I just like get burnt out because there's so much wisdom in it.
Yeah.
So, but this is like the first time I've ever read book 10.
Nice.
My favorite one out of all this is number 5. It's like right at the beginning. It said, whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. The twining strands of fate wove both of them together, your own existence and the things that happened to you. And this reminded me of a quote that Khabib tells his athletes. He said that whenever they struggle with confidence before going into the ring, he always tells them, be ready for Allah's decision. So it's like, it's not like, hey, you put the work in, you're going to win. It's like you need to train as hard as you can to be ready for whatever decision God has made for you. And it would be disrespectful to not show up 100% ready for that decision. Whether that decision is you lose, you got to lose with respect and valor, or you win and you got to take it with pride. Yeah. And so like every time I'm training for a competition now, I think of that, like be ready for the decision, because I don't have the decision. It's already been decided for me, but I owe it to myself and I owe it to God to like to bring my best effort forward. And I feel like for a competition, I feel like that's really changed like my mindset for everything.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm a fan of that.
I have number 3. Remember, though, that you are by nature born to bear all that your own judgment can decide bearable or tolerate in action, if you represent it to yourself as benefit or duty. Again, it goes back to how are you going to bear it? You know, that's the whole stoicism, but how do you bear it? And you're never given more than you can handle until you die.
Yep.
You know, that's really the ultimate the ultimate
and
thing.
then if you die, you don't have to worry about
then
it.
Then it's it. Yeah.
I think mine says, I have number 3 highlighted too. It's a little bit different. It says everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it's unendurable, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well. Just remember, you can endure anything your mind can make endurable by treating it as in your interest to do so, in your interest or in your nature. So it's like, either just endure it and just move forward, or if you don't endure it, there's nothing to worry about because you're dead. You know, I like that.
I love it. I got 14. Nature gives all and takes all back. To her, the man educated into humility says, give what you will, take back what you will. Mm-hmm. And he says this in no spirit of defiance, but simply as her loyal subject. Mm-hmm. Goes back to fate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it when he talks about fakes. It's like you accept it and you don't try to change it. All you try to change is your perception of it. Yeah. You know, so it's like religious in a way, but it's also very empowering.
So there's an interesting dynamic there too, which is the serenity prayer that I talked about, but also like facing something, let's say something horrible, and it actually actively creating something from that. Mm-hmm. So it's the conscious mind and our spirit that says, this is a horrible thing, or it's something that I can bear, and I will turn something out of it. Mm-hmm. Magnificent. Yeah. And that's some of the greatest people in the world have gone through the worst shit in the world.
But then some of the people who have, you know, fallen to vice and things like that have had no like hardship in their life, and that's why they do it. You know, yeah. It's like you've heard like the rich guy's son. He's had everything given to him, so he always turns into a drug addict and does nothing with himself. But it's like the dad who had nothing growing up and built himself from nothing. He's always the one who's like the most virtuous. You know, it's like Marcus Aurelius' son, I think it was Claudius, was like an awful emperor because he had everything given to him. And Marcus Aurelius didn't have anything given to him, you know. And even in the book, or not the book, but I think in a biography, he said that at some point he can't control what his son does. He can only control his input, and if he doesn't want to accept his input, he can't control it.
Yeah. Which is, again, taking responsibility.
Yeah, and as a parent, I feel like that's really... I know my dad gets fed up with me sometimes. He'll give me advice, and I just do the exact opposite of it.
Yeah.
And then something bad happens. I'm like, man, I can't believe that happened. He's like, well, you should have followed my advice. I'm like, well, I'm your son, so I have to not follow it at some point, right?
Well, you'll mature you'll learn that through wisdom, through your own wisdom.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe one day I'll listen to him. I have number 22 highlighted. It says, possibilities. To keep on living, you should be used to it by now. To end it, it was your choice after all, or to die, having met your obligations. These are the only options and reason for optimism. And I like that because everyone's used to living. You've been doing it your whole life. There's no way to not live. So like whenever I'm faced with like something that's awful or like really hard, I'm just like, if you have to just keep waking up every morning. That's all you have to do. Mm-hmm. And as long as I get up out of bed every morning in a bad situation, I'm good. To end it, I mean, technically it is your choice. You know, you made that choice. That's your sovereignty. Or to die. And if you die, you know you met your obligations as a human being through the actions you've had throughout your life, if you've been an honest and trustworthy person. And that is a reason for optimism. It's like, I have the choice to keep on going. I have the choice to take it away. And if I died right now, I would have met all my obligations as a person. So there's no reason to really be afraid, if that makes sense.
I have the next line, 23. Always have clear in your mind that the grass is not greener elsewhere, and how everything is the same here as on the top of a mountain or on the seashore or wherever you will. Mm-hmm. And that's just a good reminder for me that, you know, we think that we need to achieve something or be something or do something. In reality, at any given moment, we decide right now how we feel.
Yep.
And that's all we have.
And it's hard to juggle that too, because like you want to strive towards a goal. Like everyone has to have a goal to progress. But if you strive towards that goal too hard, you end up losing a lot of things to get it. And then when you get it, it feels empty, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, being able to strive towards a goal, but understand that that goal is not going to make you any better. It may. You never know. It may be like being sober. It may be having a family. That could change your life. But if it's like, I want to make this amount of money every year, by the time you get it, so long as you were fulfilled the entire time up to it, you'll be fine. Yeah. But if you're not fulfilled until you get it, usually that's where bad things end up happening.
That's the journey of jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. You know, it's... enjoy the journey, because the destination, you get your black belt, and then it's like, well, then what? If you didn't enjoy it up to that point because you were just grinding and trying to get there, the whole point is to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, that's why everyone's like, I really want my blue belt, I really want my purple belt. I'm always like, no, you shouldn't really want any belt. You should just come to class, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because usually people who are like, man, I really want this next belt, they come to train for the next belt, and then they come to train for the next belt. When they get their black belt, they end up stop training because that's all they were focused on. They weren't focused on actually learning the art itself. Yeah. It's like people who strive to get good grades in school but don't strive to actually learn the information. I feel like I know a lot of people, myself included, is like I got good grades at first just because people told me to, and like I would get a lot of praise for it, but I never really learned anything. And it's like later on through high school, I didn't really do as well in school, but the classes I did do well, and I took the time to actually love the learning process. And I still remember information from that time, but like whenever I was just going through it just to get like that A on the report card, I didn't really learn anything.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like
it actually, and the system is designed to you know, basically benefit people that can memorize and just study for tests versus actually learning the material.
Yeah, that's sad.
Anything else in 10?
Yeah, I have number 24, my mind. What is it? What am I making of it? What am I using it for? Is it empty of thought, isolated and torn loose from those around it, melted into flesh and blended with it so it shares its urges? I like his like definition of flesh. Like, you should never succumb to fleshly urges, like any addictions, any vices like that, because your soul is what monitors that. Like, your body's going to die at some point. It's never going to be satiated. It's never going to be full. But your mind can always rule over that. And like, if you let your bodily urges take over, you're gonna be in a world of hurt, you know. And if it's blended, if your flesh is blended with your soul, that essentially means you have no self-control, you know. Because whatever the body wants, the mind has to first like be a governor, be like, do we really want this right now? And if you don't want it, just don't do it, you know. I feel like with any addiction, like this book was talking about, if you just believe you don't have it and you get it out of your mind, you're pretty set. But if you're constantly thinking about it, your body's going to eventually take over, like at any point. Like if you're struggling with alcohol addiction, you're constantly thinking like, no, I don't want alcohol. No, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. Your mind, your body eventually somehow finds a way to rationalize it to yourself. It can be the craziest rationalization ever. But then you end up doing it, you feel good for like 5 minutes, and then afterwards you feel awful. You know?
What I've found through my own coaching, and when you have an addiction, it's one thing to like ignore it and put it away and decide to not think about it or decide not to fall into that thing. But I've found a more powerful thing is changing who you're being and actually your identity.
Yeah, not identifying.
Not identifying, saying, hi, I'm Evan, I'm an alcoholic, versus like, hi, I'm Evan, I'm a martial artist. And that martial artist has those things that aren't consistent with being drunk on the weekends. Because, or I'm an athlete, or I'm, you know, you fill in the blank with whatever it is that you want to be as your identity. And then the rest of the other things don't really align with that. And then it's easier to just say, oh, athletes don't drink all the time, so I don't need to drink. You know, or they eat healthy, or they, you know, focus on their sleep, or, you know, whatever, you name it, whatever you're trying to accomplish in your health journey or your own journey.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that identity thing, because I struggled with depression my whole life, and then I don't know if it was Jordan Peterson or someone else, but he said a quote that's like, you can feel depressed, but you don't have to identify with being depressed, because there's two different things with feeling versus being. So if I can feel depressed and I know it'll go away, but if I believe that I'm a depressed person, I'm going to act like it. So if I just don't believe in it, it's not going to happen. And that sounds really like wushu and like it's like
not.
But it actually is a thing.
So anything that comes after I am is the most powerful statement you'll ever have. So I am depressed is you're depressed. You're being a person of depression versus saying I'm experiencing the feeling of depression right now. That's a totally different energy to who you're showing up as, because feelings and emotions are like clouds. They come and go, just like thoughts.
I feel like personally, this is my personal opinion, I feel like also in our society nowadays, if you say you have depression, everyone just like, oh dude, you have depression, like I'm so sorry to hear that. Here's 5 different medications you can take. We don't care if you're exercising or going out with friends or have a purpose. We just want you to take this medication. And then that medication, every time you go to Walgreens, you're like, oh, I'm here to pick up my meds because I am depressed. Instead of what I feel like they should ask, like I've personally gone into the doctor and like, man, I'm just not feeling right. Like I feel like something's off. And they're like, okay, here's two prescriptions. And I'm like, you didn't ask me if I'm working out. Didn't ask me if I'm eating the right things. Didn't ask me how I'm sleeping. Didn't ask me how my social life is. All you said was, okay, here's your meds. And then you take those meds every day. That's you telling yourself an I am statement of I am depressed. I am depressed. I have anxiety. Versus just like, I feel this way right now, but despite that, I'm going to go work out. And typically when you tell people just to work out no matter what, it always helps them. So I feel like in society nowadays, everyone wants to identify with that.
It's a victim. There's a mentality of being a victim to your circumstances, your genes, or to the environment versus taking ownership and responsibility.
I mean, you even see it in jiu-jitsu. You know, like someone's like, oh, I can't do that. It's like you can, like I have kids who are like, I have kids I'll be teaching like a Torianda pass. I'm like, I can't do it. And I change one thing and they're able to do it. And I look at them and said, never say those words again. I don't want to hear I can't ever again. Because like you should never say I can't.
Yeah.
Because you can always do something. Yeah. You know, like a guy with the short legs can still do a triangle. They can do teepee choke. They don't have to do a fully locked figure four. Yeah. You can if you identify as a gi athlete, you're not going to want to do heel hooks. I can't defend heel hooks. I'm a gi athlete. Well, no, you can still learn heel hook defense. There's nothing stopping you besides the mindset up here. You know?
So I'm reading this book about finances, which is interesting. The mentality about money is a whole nother topic, but saying I can't afford something, that shuts off your thinking versus the idea of saying, how could I afford that?
Yep.
Even if you don't want to afford it or even if you don't want to buy it, it's opening up your mind to the possibility of how you would need to be or how you would do that to afford it. It's a lazy way to say I can't do something and then you just shut off half of your brain. And again, it's not about being something that you need or want, or it's just an idea of watching how your mind thinks and creating those thoughts that are going to be beneficial to you.
That's I mean, it's really a biblical principle. The first thing God did was He spoke things into existence. You know? So whatever you speak over your life is gonna. That's how
It's
we
the
really
word.
do manifest.
First was the word.
So it's really important to do that. And as an athlete, I mean, I see everything through the lens of kind of the military now because I was in it a long time. And losses, there are cliches, losses are lessons, that kind of stuff, but you'll start to realize even through all this stuff you guys have read, most of what the seam of continuity I'm saying is that like there's a lot more value in the lessons that you learn, or do you even learn any lessons at all from winning? Maybe not. And all the growth, I think, happens through loss.
It has to.
And struggle. So even you said it really well. You told a story, it really illustrated about you being in school and being able to get a grade and doing things to execute subject, verb, object, period. Pop, got it. And then you become passionate about something and you're like, you didn't talk about the part of what did it take for you to cultivate these things, foster these things that you became passionate about. And that's digging with a shovel, man. That's going, wait, I got to open this book and read this. This is interesting. And then it's like, and that in and of itself is a struggle. There's so much value in losing stuff.
I was talking about that with Joe the other day. Is like you can have two athletes. You can have one who has never been good at anything. This is like how I identify myself. I've never been good at anything, never won anything, never. Always the last kid to get picked for the team basketball in gym class.
Sure.
You know, like, we got to pick that guy. He's the crutch, you know.
Yeah, you know.
That I feel like that person will always succeed more than the person who's always been gifted. Because I know so many athletes, like, you could take two athletes to a competition, one who's lost a lot and doesn't really, you know, they're used to losing, and one who's won everything. If they both make it to the finals and they both lose, the one who's lost their whole life is going to stay in the training. They're like, okay, I lost. I don't care. I've lost so many times. I literally don't care. And the one who wins everything, they lose that one time. You probably never see them again. You know, and they could have been a great athlete, but they just can't handle losing. Like, I don't even remember I hardly remember any of my losses. I hardly remember any of my wins either, because I know that if I let my wins get to my head, it gets too big. I can end up being like the other guy, you know. Sure. But it all, like you're saying, it all comes down to the words you tell yourself. If you tell yourself, I'm hot shit, I'm going to win everything. No one can beat me. I'm the top dog in the room. You get beat. That downfall is going to be a lot worse than if you're like, you know, I'm decent, you know, I'm good. And if you win, you're like, yeah, I'm good. And if you lose, you're like, well, someone got me.
Yeah.
You know, like that happened the other weekend. Someone called me out and they're like, I know I can beat you. We're gonna go right now. And I just looked at him and I said, man, everyone can beat me. Like, it's no big deal if you can beat me. I don't care. I've had white belts submit me. It's not gonna take me down any.
Yeah.
You know, or I could be like, you think you can beat me? I'm the guy. Like, you can't beat me. I train full time. I do this. It's like identity, like you were saying. Like, you can identify too heavily with something or too little with something.
Yeah.
And so it's those words that people speak and the words you speak to yourself are very important.
And to be able to succumb to the reality of that, like what you're talking about. It's like, hey, and jiu-jitsu is merciless. I got to say, I've never found anything else that is as genuine as walking out on the mat and going, it's training or it's combat speed or it's you're both at level 10 or we can always measure it, but we got a situation where you can really pull the trigger on each other.
And it's honest. You
And it's
can't
honest.
there's
Instant
no,
feedback and honest.
And it's like, well, I couldn't. It's like, look, man. And it is, and it's like, they can be shiny, but you just find out what it's all about as soon as you do it.
Yeah.
And you see immediately who's put the work in.
One of my former coaches, Jonathan Knight, he used to be a co-owner here. He would always say that whenever you lose in training, lose in competition, don't think, oh man, this person beat me. Think of it as this person's style of jiu-jitsu beat me. Like, jiu-jitsu is what beat me. I need to figure out what it was. Because if you attach meaning to something, like, oh, this person's better than me. Like, this happens with Nolan all the time. Have you rolled Nolan before?
Yeah.
He's so freaking good. He comes in once a month to train, and he just beats me up every time, even though I train like 3 times a day. And every time I'm like, man, how is he the one beating me? Like, I'm attributing like an identity and a perception of him. I'm like, well, it's not that he's beating me. He just understands parts of jiu-jitsu that maybe I don't, and I need to figure out what that is and game plan for that.
Yeah.
So I think that helps a lot of athletes and a lot of kids too. It's like, you are not the one that lost. You were just beaten by the sport that we train every day. Like, there's nothing about them that's better than you. They may just have a better understanding of jiu-jitsu, which is in itself is an obsolete, minuscule thing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, and then going back to John Danaher, it's like in the training room, like none of it really matters.
Yeah.
Although there is still elements of that. We're all human, so we all like to push ourselves and see.
And we all like shit talking every now and then.
And we like to see if our moves work well against people that are trying to defend our moves, right?
In training, it's a perceived, like, what may be a loss may be. Like, hey, man, I'm resetting when I get a grip. And you may run to a submission, and but once I defended this, maybe I'll pump the brakes or something like that. And really, I got what I needed in to make sure that when I get to competition, so that is your responsibility to go is when you pull that trigger, you got to be able to go.
Well, I could tell you we're going way off topic and we got to get back on here, but like my leg defense has been one of my weaknesses, and working with you the last month, I've been putting myself in there, like even starting, and I've been getting tapped way more than I ever do. But it's also making me way better with my legs and like leg defenses and starting to put things together. Yeah. So it's like you have to put yourself in bad spots. You have to be willing to quote unquote lose or tap to get better like that.
So what else you got highlighted here?
I'm ready to move on to 11, but unless you have more on 10.
Yep, I got 11.
Let's do book 11. So I have must remember to control yourself, fulfill living virtuously, remember past of the whole. You're part of the whole. And again, that's kind of what my gist of book 11 was. Number 11, the external things whose pursuit or avoidance troubles you do not force themselves on you, but in a way you yourself go out to them. However that may be, keep your judgment of them calm, and they too will still stay still. Then you will not be seen either to pursue or to avoid.
What number is that?
11.
Let me see what mine says. My 11 says, it's the pursuit of these things and your attempts to avoid them that leaves you in such turmoil, and yet they aren't seeking you out. You are the one seeking them. Like we were just saying, like with vice and addiction, it's like your identity is seeking out that.
Yeah.
But if you just identify with something else, you're not seeking it anymore. You're changing your path. So I'm a fan of that one. I like that just overall idea of like, just don't think about it. It's not going to be there. I have number 13. This is something that attributes to me. It says, someone despises me. That's their problem. Mine, not to do or say anything despicable. Someone hates me. That's their problem. Mine, to be patient and cheerful with everyone, including them. Ready to show them their mistake, not spitefully to show off my own self-control, but in an honest, upright way. That's what we should be like inside, and never let the gods catch us feeling anger or resentment. It's like I was saying, that guy that was like trash talking me and stuff. Like when we slap bump, he was like, I thought it was an MMA fight at first. He was like trying to bend my fingers backwards. He was like rubbing his face into mine. He was taking me down into other people, like people sitting on the mat. He would take me down over them to keep going. He would like slam me in the walls and stuff. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, I'm not getting angry. Yeah. Because I know that when I get angry, that's when things are going to go, like a cannon's going to go off. So I'm like, the whole time I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to stay calm. Not gonna hurt. There's no reason for me. He's just going to gas himself out. I'm going to end up winning this. If I don't win it, I'm not going to care because it doesn't matter like as much as it does to him. And then I started thinking halfway through the match because I submitted him a couple times and he kept making excuses, and then he didn't want to accept that he was losing, in different ways. And that started to relieve my pressure about the situation because I was like, okay, I can see where he's coming from. Maybe this guy believed he was better than me, and now he's frustrated with himself, and he's taking that out on me. I can't be mad at someone for that, because if I was in their situation, I would have done the same thing. And he kept saying, man, I don't know heel hook defense. And I kept putting him in heel hooks, and his coach was trying to coach him through it, and he would get submitted, and he'd get upset. And I'm like, in my head, I'm trying to help him. You know, there's no reason for me to be upset at this guy for doing something that I probably would have done in his situation. If I had lived his whole life situation up to that point, I would have had to react the same way. And that's why I think every time, if anyone is rude to me or anyone's mean to me, like, if I lived everything up until that moment that they did, I would have to react the same way they did. And all I can do is try to help them through that. And if they don't want to be helped, I can't help them. And it's no infraction upon me. It's like, you see that a lot in competition too. It's like the guy who gets overly aggressive, the guy who gets really emotional, they always end up losing. And the guy who can keep their cool and keep their composure always wins. Just like in life, you know, like if you succumb to those negative emotions, nothing good can come out of that. Nothing ever can come out of that. And so I feel like, honestly, if you took every lesson in this book and put it in a jiu-jitsu sense, it's almost like we're living the meditations out on the mat. And I feel like that's why I like this, because it's like we're mentally we're mentally learning, and we're physically learning how to do it as well.
So when you were rolling, were you actually like slowing down enough to be like, wow, this is intense, but I'm going to stay really calm?
No, the moment we locked hands, I was like, this is how it's going to be. And he like threw me into a wall, and we were resetting back to the center, and he like ran back to the center, and I just walked back to the center.
Yeah.
And like every time he would like push my face or like do anything, I would literally just go completely limp, just to show him that it wasn't like getting to my head. And he would try to bend my fingers backwards, and I just would act like nothing was happening. And then when we got on the ground, I was just being really chill. I have the videos of it if you want to see it. And you can just tell, like, in my demeanor, I don't care at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't care to begin with, so why should I care now that he's being mean, being aggressive? But he's the one who cared at first, so that's why he was acting that way. And so, like, I was just, like, whenever someone's really aggressive with me, it just makes me even more calm, because I know that I've already won the mental battle.
Yeah.
And even if they were to win that match, I still beat them mentally, because they they had a negative emotion.
Them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I live rent-free in their head, you know, that's why I think, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can show you the video after this if you want.
That goes right into number 10 that I have. In your fits of anger, have this thought ready to come to mind, that there is nothing manly in being angry, but a gentle calm is both more human and therefore more virile. Mm-hmm. It is the gentle who have strength, sinew, and courage, not the indignant and complaining. Mm-hmm.
That was right in what we were saying?
Yeah, just going back to the anger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was, anger is much a sign of weakness as it's pain.
Yeah, it's funny. I hardly ever feel anger towards other people anymore, because I've practiced this so often. The main person I feel anger with is myself a lot of the time. You know that.
Yeah,
it's like I get angry at myself for maybe making the wrong decision or doing the wrong thing or something like that. So I feel like it's easier to control anger with other people. It's very difficult to control anger with yourself. And so I've been trying to read all these chapters as in, like, not angry towards an external, but angry towards myself, because that's still a negative emotion in and of itself.
Absolutely.
You know? I have number 24. If you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it in a consistent way. Unhelpful, unless you specify a goal. There is no common benchmark for all the things that people think are good, except for a few, the ones that affect us all. So the goal should be a common one, a civic one. If you direct all your energies toward that, your actions will be consistent, and so will you. This is something I've been thinking of, because I'm trying to find a goal and a path in life. And, you can have an arbitrary goal, like make this amount of money, but what does that do for the people around you? I get so much fulfillment out of teaching and helping other people that I would almost not train. If I'm in an adult class, I find myself teaching more than actually training.
Yeah.
So it's like, that is my
passion.
That's my passion, and that to me drives me more than training does sometimes. Because training is helping myself, and I can do that all day long and not get any fulfillment out of it. But if I help other people, that's where I really get a lot of fulfillment. So I like the fact that he says, like, the main thing is the common good, and what's best for you is best for the common good, because you are part of it. Yeah, you're part of the community.
I have the last verse, 39. Socrates used to question thus: what do you want to have, the souls of rational or irrational beings? Mm-hmm. Rational? What sort of rational beings? The pure or the lower? The pure. Why then don't you aim for that? Because we have it. Why then are you fighting in disagreements? Mm-hmm. It's like, we have that at any time. Mm-hmm. Have your aim be correct. Mm-hmm. The last quote you said kind of reminded me of that. If you don't have, a purpose of where you're going on setting sail, no good win. There's no good win
is favorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 39 too. because this is a big reminder I have to remind myself, because I perceive it this way, and I'll kind of go into it. It says, Socrates, what do you want? Rational minds or irrational ones? Rational ones. Healthy or sick? Healthy. Then work to obtain them. We already have. Then why all this squabbling? And I put this as a reminder for myself, because a lot of time, I started out my self-improvement journey a certain way, and it almost got to the point, it's getting to the point where, like, I'm already where I wanted to be 5 years ago, but I'm still in that mindset of, like, not enough. Like, I need to do this better. I need to wake up 5 minutes earlier. I need to make sure I'm drinking this in the morning. I need to add all these supplements, and I need to make sure, like, everything's optimal. And I'm still perceiving that I'm not good enough. I'm not improved enough, but it's like, I was talking to my girlfriend about this, and it's like, just remind yourself that you are good right now. Like, you've worked so hard up until now, like, you need to accept that and accept, like, the fruits of your labor. Because I have a hard time accepting things, like accepting compliments, accepting wins and losses and things like that. But it's like, I have to remind myself that I put all the work in right now to deserve that. And there's nothing self-righteous about that. There's nothing indulgent about that. It's like, I put the work in, so I need to realize that. So it's like, then work to obtain them. It's like, we already have them. It's like, then why are you squabbling about it? Like, if you have it, don't keep, squabbling about it,
It's some of the most powerful, like, insights come from paradox. And, like, that paradox of wanting to strive, and that's the human condition.
Yep.
Like, we're all designed to grow and to strive, but also recognizing that at any given moment we are exactly where we need to be, and, like, be content with that.
Yeah, it's
like,
a
fulfilled.
huge paradox.
And so, how do you hold those two, like, contrary beliefs? And that's where the wisdom comes from. Is that when you are going for something, you're going for it. When you're cool with where you're at, you're cool with where you're at.
It's like, it's hard to do both things. It's like going left and right at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like in jiu-jitsu, it's like wanting to do a move, but not wanting to do it so much you overcommit.
Yeah.
Or it's like, hey, I want to do this move. It's like, well, you got to do 4 other moves before that. It's like, well, I didn't want to do those. It's like, well, if you want to do this one, you got to do this one. But if you want it too bad, you're going to get submitted. I think everything's a big paradox when you think about it, like, philosophically.
Ready for book 12?
Final book.
Final
Let's do it.
book, and this one was about death. Meet it calmly, with kindness and peace, without resentment. That was kind of what I got from it. And the very first one is, all that you pray to reach at some point in the circuit of your life can be yours now, if you are generous to yourself. That is, if you leave all the past behind and trust the future to providence and direct the present solely to reverence and justice. I mean, that one line right there is just like the present moment.
That's all you have. But a lot of people it's hard to accept the present moment, especially nowadays when everyone's, like, it's like you're saying, you're forward thinking, I want to achieve this, but I need to understand that I have everything I need right now. But if I have everything I need right now, I might not want to strive towards getting something else. Then I'm afraid of change, like he was talking about the book. So that's something. What's up, bro? We're doing our book club. You want to, yeah?
It's the very last book. Come on, Mike.
You're good.
All right.
No, he's too tired. It's okay. I really only had 2 things highlighted in this. Mine was number 5. How is it that the gods arranged everything with such skill, such care for our well-being, and somehow overlooked one thing? That certain people, in fact, the best of them, the gods' own partners, the ones whose piety and good works brought them closest to the divine, that these people, when they die, should cease to exist forever, utterly vanished. Well, assuming that's really true, you can be sure they would have arranged things differently, if that had been appropriate. If it were the right thing to do, they would have done it. And if it were natural, nature would have demanded it. So from the fact that they didn't, if that's the case, we can conclude that it was inappropriate. Surely you can see yourself that to ask the question is to challenge the gods' fairness. And why would you be bringing in fairness unless the gods are, in fact, fair, and absolutely so? If they are, how could they have carelessly overlooked something so unfair, so illogical in setting up the world? So it's like, people are like, it's unfair that they lost their life. It's unfair that nothing comes after. But it's like, if they created all this, like they created this mug, they created this phone, they created nature outside, they had to have thought that the main creation they had was gonna end and nothing happens afterwards. And that's the purpose of life, is the fact that it ends. Like the fact that you were the moment you were born, the only guarantees you're gonna die. That's what gives everything purpose. That's what allows you. That's what allows you to see what God has created. If you were never gonna die, you would never appreciate anything, because you're just gonna see it all the time.
Yeah.
It's like people who have the most money in the world, they don't appreciate it anymore, because it's like, oh, $100. Like Bill Gates can have $100 fall out of his wallet. It's useless to his time to pick it up.
Yeah.
So it's like, the fact that everything is finite and nothing comes after it, or so we think. We don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there.
The great mystery.
Yeah, that gives everything meaning. If without the fact that you're going to die, you would not have any meaning. And it's funny because one of my assistants in the past, I was like, what's your biggest fear? And he's like, dying is my biggest fear. And I was like, really? Because that's the one thing that motivates me in my entire life is dying.
Yeah.
He's like, I just get so afraid that everything's going to end. And I was like, doesn't that just like excite you though? Like the fact that it is going to end and you need to enjoy it right now or else you're not going to have anything left. I feel like that's something I feel like he was trying to tell himself this whole time. It's like, you're going to die and you have to love that about life itself.
Yeah.
You have to love that part of it.
This one's 26 is the last one I have. And at the end of that one, it says, and you have forgotten this too, that every man's mind is God and has flowed from that source, that nothing is our own property, but even our child, our body, our very soul have come from that source, that all is as thinking makes it so, that each of us lives our only the present moment, and the present moment is all we lose. Mm-hmm. And so like, I like that idea of we're all individual representations of God, that we're all equal in our own ways, except we're also extraordinary in all of our ways. And that as we think, we're experiencing, if you're in tune with the Holy Spirit or the whatever that is inside of you, then that is experiencing God. Mm-hmm. And so like, why not enjoy that and be present with it?
Mm-hmm. No matter what's happening.
Yeah.
Like I'm at the point now where the world could literally end and I'd still be grateful. I was telling my dad, I was like, I'm worried about like, if like the economy goes down, like what's going to happen to me? And I was like, I caught myself. I was like, you know what? I could live in my car if I had to. I was like, that'd actually be a fun experience. Cause like, imagine you get to live in your car and then 5 years later you can say like, you know what? I need nothing besides a place to sleep and a thing to ride in. That's all I need. So everything else after that is just icing on the cake. So no matter what your situation, you can always make the best out of it. Even if I had no car to stay in, if I ended up buying a car after a recession or after an economic collapse, hey, I'm going to really appreciate this car.
Well, so those fears, everyone has those fears, if they're honest with themselves, and then knowing that the work we've done up to this point has created the person we are that will always overcome, because we've always overcome up to this point. So why fear what you don't know? Because you've already done everything you have up to this point.
And you didn't know.
And you didn't know.
Yep.
And so it's like such a fruitless fear, because you would just face whatever you were facing.
Yeah, fear is definitely. I feel like we're so good nowadays. Like 200 years ago, they probably didn't worry about the future because they were just worried about staying alive.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays survival is so guaranteed that we have so much time and free time and thought to be fearful of things. Like if you had gone to like USSR and been like, man, I'm so worried that this is going to happen. This is going to happen. They're like, dude, I had bread all week long and I don't know if I'm going to have anything next week. They don't have time to worry about anything besides that. And I feel like that's where a lot of gratitude comes from. Like a lot of the best philosophers of the time came from that time period.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays survival is so guaranteed and pleasure is so bountiful and it can be found everywhere that everyone indulges in that pleasure without even really knowing it. And then all of this fear and anxiety comes about because they're not struggling for anything. And I feel like that's why jiu-jitsu makes people a lot happier, is because it's like you are forcing yourself to struggle. You're simulating combat with someone else to make everything else a lot easier. Yeah. Like when I have someone trying to rip my head off or rip my leg off, it makes dealing with that guy in traffic or dealing with the uncertainty of like money or relationships or like living situation, it makes all that a lot easier to deal with, because like, well, in reality, like 100 years ago, this would have just been regular, Yeah. I'm not worried about food. I can get food no matter what. So it's like everything is so easy nowadays that it's almost gotten way too hard for everyone. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more.
That's right.
Well, that was Meditations, everybody. You got anything, John?
No, this is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There was one of my professors at this college that I went to in New York years ago said something that stuck with me, and you mentioned it. It's the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. Mm-hmm. It's called pluralistic utilitarianism. Mm. And if you look that up, it's like, wait a second, man. And you were like, hey, that is something that kind of keyed with you. And I was like, oh, EJ, I've always remembered that. He goes, hey, this is what pluralistic utilitarianism. Mm-hmm. This guy was a dinosaur in the journalism world and stuff. So, I mean, that's, and I really think that serving people is how a person really does, fill their heart up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So long as you can serve yourself too.
Yeah.
Don't want to go overboard. Not moderation.
Well, the class is going to start here in a couple of minutes. there, John. But thank you very much, everybody. Anybody out there listening, we're going to do another one coming up in probably 2 weeks. We might change the day, but we'll release the book, and I'll send it out via text and or email to folks. So, all right, that's it. Have a blessed day.
Later.
See ya.